here if you, I don't have to hear the whole time, but
I love it. Awesome.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Johnson, and this is the season finale of Birth Working, which is our Wednesday weekly live education series for birth workers, midwives, EMS, paramedics, doulas, anyone who touches birth. We try to bring in field experts from all different paths. And today, on our last episode of season 4, we have Jessica Henry. Jessica Henry is a flight nurse, but she actually has so many credentials. I can't even remember them all, but they are in the Substack post. So remember, if you are not on our newsletter or in our Substack, do subscribe there. We're going to keep going even after Birth Working with our weekly newsletters and updates. So do make sure you're subscribed to Substack. We're going to be doing some replays from earlier seasons of Birth Working while we're in between season 4 and season 5. And if you are interested in being, like Jessica here, a guest on Birth Working, we have an inquiry and interest form on the website, pacificbirthinstitute.com. Please complete that because we're going to start loading up our season 5 schedule. But okay, without further ado, Jessica Henry, please tell us about yourself. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Hi, thank you for having me and thank you for reaching out.
Yes.
So I'm a flight nurse and I wrote this book here. So that is a review study guide for neonatal pediatric critical care transport certification exam. That's a mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually ended up writing that book because in my field, we're not necessarily like a NICU team or a neonatal team, but basically any baby, once they're discharged from the hospital, they're considered like dirty and they no longer go to the NICU. And we become responsible for transporting those babies. And so they could be a couple of days old coming in critical condition. It's now our responsibility to transport them. What I was finding was that we were being, expected to transport younger and sicker babies and with no like official training on that. We take like an NRP class, which kind of, you guys probably deal a lot with that, which is like, what do we do immediately after this baby's born to resuscitate them?
Mm-hmm.
But we're coming in after they've been resuscitated. Now, what do we have to know to transport them safely? And so I was like, I found this certification and I kind of have a lot of letters after my name because I've always felt like this desire and this hunger for more knowledge. And I felt like I don't know enough. I don't know enough. How am I supposed to put myself in the situation where I'm going to be taking somebody at, the most terrifying time of their life when they're traumatically injured, critically ill, on the brink of death. And here I am now taking you into my hands without a doctor by my side to throw you in a helicopter and take you somewhere. So I've just always sought out more and more knowledge just to feel more comfortable with what I'm doing because we're expected to kind of hold a lot, carry a lot of knowledge, and people look at us and they're like, you guys know everything. And it's like, no, we don't. So I found this certification and was like, oh, perfect. That's going to cover all of the information that I need to know. And any other certification that you go looking for, there are tons and tons and tons of resources for. I started looking and there was nothing. So I kind of went on the website for the people that offer the certification and was looking at different resources that they say to look at. I read like 5 or 6 textbooks cover to cover.
Yeah.
I took a ridiculous amount of notes. Basically anything I've never encountered before, I took notes on. I went and I took the test and I passed it. Still didn't necessarily make me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the expert. I know what I'm doing, right? But my partner at the time, he was like, I really feel like I should do the same thing. It's not a very common certification for people in my field to have. A lot of NICU teams do have it and stuff like that, but it's just not common for the general all population provider to have. And so my partner on the helicopter was like, I want to take that too. And he asked one day, he's like, do you happen to have this book with you so I can read it? And I was like, I do not, but I've got my notebook. And he starts flipping through my notebook and he was like, Jess, that review book that doesn't exist is right here. So
Totally.
it was a lot more work than just copying my notes into a book. There was a lot of like flight physiology, basic stuff that I already knew that I kind of just like brushed over when I was studying for it. So I had to actually like formulate that into book chapters. Um, but yeah, basically I put together that book as the resource that wasn't available for me, um, so that other people can easily just find all of that information in one place. I still, it's interesting, I put it out there and a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you must be the expert in this. And I'm like, nope, not at all. I'm one of you. I'm just like
But-
you seeking that information. I just did the work of finding it in so many different places and compiling it all into one place.
Okay.
So
But I mean,
there's that.
even our informal chats to prepare for this,
Yeah.
you were dropping knowledge bombs on me. So, you know, you're going to bring some transport tips today that actually our audience is really going to want to hear. And if you're live with us, please use the chat function, drop your questions in the chat, and I will go ahead and speak them out loud to Jessica, and we can totally discourse over any of your questions that you have. But okay, and so jumping more into transport tips here. I loved it. You know, when I chatted with Jessica initially, she said, "But aren't you midwives the experts at babies? We typically look to you." And one, I love it when somebody in the field does acknowledge midwifery expertise. So thank you. Right? We face a lot of "you're not real." So it's great when actually we're not only real, but we're seen professionally as experts in certain things. However, you have some tips for us, and I want to go into those for critical care providers, for EMS transport providers, and new midwives and seasoned midwives. What are some things we have to really keep in mind when transporting babies that need a little extra help?
Yeah, so when we talked, a lot of kind of what you brought up was that these are midwives that are in the field, not necessarily midwives that are in the hospital, because what you're going to be calling us for is to transport maybe a baby from the scene of a home delivery that this baby's now unstable and they have to be transported to the hospital. And so before I was a flight nurse, I didn't even actually really get into my history. I was became an EMT back in like 2013. And I was working as an EMT basic. That's where I had my first delivery, which I'm going to touch on a little bit as I talk. Um, and I'm an EMT basic. That's like a 1 semester long class. It's like 6 credits, so it's a lot of credits, but it's like, okay, now you're good. Get on an ambulance. You're good to go out there. You have a very little knowledge about a lot of things. Um, but even as a flight provider, when we're called from a hospital to transport to like a higher level facility, we just don't have that in-depth training. Um, and so what I found working as like an EMT, this is kind of, we're talking about, when you're gonna see this in the field, you're gonna see this, they're called to a home, delivery, baby's unstable, we need to go to the hospital. And so that happened to me as an EMT basic before I was working on a helicopter. And we were called, baby was born. It's the middle of the winter. I'm up in Massachusetts. It is cold. We have a truck that's sitting in a garage that is also cold. We turn on our truck and we drive to the scene. The truck's still pretty cold, and most people can tolerate like waiting for the heat to turn up in the winter. But this woman just delivered this baby in this house. It really wasn't that warm because there's a lot of like older houses that don't have great heat up there as well. We walk in and the baby's just on the bathroom floor and mom's sitting there right next to it. So, in my own limited knowledge, just from having babies of my own, it was like, get that baby skin to skin, cover them up. But like the skin to skin thing was really important for just maintaining that body temperature. But even then, I didn't realize like how important that body temperature was, which I'll touch on as well. Um, so coming out to the scene, one of the biggest things that we're going to be concerned about, especially in those winter months, is that thermoregulation. So we transported this baby to the hospital. All we had for resources was put mom on the stretcher, put baby on the mom, and have the mom hold the baby with like a blanket over both of them. The blankets that we had were in the cold ambulance, so they were nice and cold. And we get the baby to the hospital, and the whole, neonatal team that came swarming was freaking out about how cold the baby was. And even if I had more knowledge at the time, I didn't have the resources to keep that baby warm. So, and this was a different situation because it was mom delivered a baby. It wasn't home birth with the midwife at the bedside. But as midwives, you can take that knowledge, with you and be like, well, what can we do to prepare these babies for EMS to come? Um, and so one of those big things is going to be make sure that the baby's nice and warm. Make sure that you have a warm way to provide that transport. Don't assume that the truck's going to come warmed up. It may be. I mean, where I work now, when I work on a truck, we keep them running all day. The heat's running. It's a little bit different. But if I'm taking a patient from the hospital, I'll grab a blanket out of a warmer. We don't have access to that out on the street. So, warm blankets, hat on the baby, skin to skin, all of that kind of stuff. And don't assume that a 911 EMS crew coming to get the baby is going to know how important it is to keep that baby warm. That was kind of one of the big things. One of the things that we kind of talked about on the phone that really stood out to me as like, this is something everybody should know about taking care of babies that I didn't learn until I was seeking out my own education and knowledge on taking care of babies was that neonatal triangle of acidosis.
Mhm.
So
Please go
basically,
into it. Yeah, go
you want me to
into
get
that.
into it?
Oh, yeah, just go right
Just a
into
little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is going to touch on that hypothermia that I was just talking about. So basically what this is looking at is the interconnectedness of three things. You've got your hypothermia, your hypoglycemia, and your hypoxia, and basically how those things essentially snowball on each other to worsen acidosis in the neonatal patient. So they are going to create a cycle where one problem exacerbates the other, and they just kind of keep worsening. So if you guys are calling because you have a hypoglycemic infant, you're going to obviously be like focused on the hypoglycemia, but it's also important to think about the other things that go into that. And I guess I was a little bit surprised because as we were talking, you were like, oh no, these are actually really good tips. Because in my brain, I'm like, these are the people that know what they're doing and what they're talking about. And you are, but it's just like the way
Well,
that it's
and
put
remembering
together, like
that,
the way it's presented.
yeah, we have so many student midwives, so many doulas and paramedics that listen to these things in the replay that actually it's almost like we have to remember as much as seasoned midwives will also tune in. A lot of this education is for the axillary support, the other community providers who may be the only person in the room, the doula, who says, okay, if we're calling because this birth was unassisted, right?
Yeah.
Let's get some extra blankets in the dryer, make sure and yank them out, right? To remember to bolster up everything you can to prevent acidosis, right? And so I was like, oh no, you got to go into this triangle of acidosis because it really brings that picture, right? For NRP, but it brings everything that you need to pay attention to. And then of course, midwives know we're going to be looking for risk factors, right? Before delivery that will say, hey, we may have more hypoglycemic issue. Hey, we had a shoulder dystocia and a resuscitation. We need to watch for hypoglycemia. As the midwife gets more educated, they recognize those risk factors and how to start really preparing for them, including we can't let this baby get cold, right? Yeah. But no, please keep going. So you were saying, okay, so the triangle of acidosis, so you have the hypothermia, you have the hypoglycemia, and you have the respiratory distress.
Hypoxia.
Neonatal, yeah, the hypoxia.
Yeah.
There you go. Keep going, please.
Okay, sure. So when you have hypothermia, we just touched on it a little bit, but neonates, they have a limited reserve, a limited ability to thermoregulate. So that's why we're so concerned with keeping them warm. That's why we pop a hat on them as soon as they pop out, right? Throw them right on mom's chest for that thermoregulation. Cold stress is going to lead to difficulty in processing glucose. So for that baby, even if they're already hypoglycemic, whatever glucose stores they have or access to glucose they have, they're going to have a harder time processing it. Also, to try to maintain their thermoregulation, they're going to increase their metabolic rate. And when they do that, that's going to require more glucose, which you're already dealing with a patient that's potentially hypoglycemic. So they're not going to be able to maintain that body temp. And the more that they try to, the more that they're going to try to increase their metabolic rate, the faster they're going to be dumping their glucose. Sorry, I did put down notes because I know I get nervous when I talk.
You're doing great. No, this is perfect because it's understanding that cycle, right? Like the homeostasis of the infant is protecting against these points on the triangle, right?
Yeah, and as we are trying, like increasing our glucose consumption, increasing our metabolic rate, we're going to be increasing our acidosis, our acid production. Hypoxia, which is, your low oxygen levels, that's going to impair our cellular energy production. So when we have oxygen available to, break down glucose into the actual energy molecules that our body uses, which is called ATP, that's going to be called aerobic metabolism, when we have oxygen available, we're going to produce 38 ATP molecules. You don't have to like memorize this. I'm just going to throw out some numbers that's going to make it, the importance of it stick.
Yeah.
Per glucose molecule, you're going to produce 38 ATP, and then your waste product is going to be oxygen and carbon dioxide, which the carbon dioxide comes out because we breathe it out. Anaerobic metabolism happens when we don't have enough oxygen. So for every glucose molecule, we're only able to produce 2 ATP molecules, which is what we need for energy, which is what we're needing to, drive our respiratory rate, what we're needing to produce that thermoregulation to run everything in the body. We're only producing 2. And then our waste product is going to be lactic acid. So that's going to increase drastically our acidosis. And that's not just going to like disappear like our carbon dioxide will, not just through breathing. So hypoxia, we're going to be burning through our glucose faster because our body's saying, I need this energy. I need to get warm. Let's burn through all this glucose. And as it's burning through more glucose, producing less ATP, we're producing more acid and just like amplifying the amount of acid that we're producing. And so then hypoglycemia, which you kind of initially brought up in our conversations as, something that you guys deal with often is an infant that is hypoglycemic. So hypoglycemia, they're not going to have the ability to produce the energy that they need to maintain their respiratory rate. They're going to be in respiratory distress. They're not going to be able to regulate their temperature, even with their limited ability to do that, because they don't have the glucose for that. Hypoxia and hypoglycemia, again, you're going to be burning through that glucose faster. So just the way that these things kind of spiral on each other and worsen acidosis. So the big question is, well, what's the big deal with acidosis? Acidosis is essentially what leads to death in a lot of situations. It's going to be what damages our organs, our essential organs. We're going to be at risk for neurological damage, developmental delays, damage to the brain, heart, lungs, kidneys. And if it gets bad enough, there will be death. If it gets really bad and then we're still able to get them back, you may end up with that kind of medically complicated baby who's bringing these medical conditions, these delays, this damage to their organs throughout the rest of their life. So the reason I'm bringing this into, what can midwives do to prepare a baby to be transported? And, if it's a midwife or it's an EMS person that's watching this right now, what can we do to not worsen the underlying condition? If we already know that they're having an issue with glucose, what can we do to like decrease the body's need for more glucose? Well, we can make sure that they're oxygenating. Do you guys have oxygen with you, like when you're delivering?
I would say a lot of midwives do.
Okay, so you could be
States, maybe
providing
not,
low by
but a lot of us
oxygen.
do. Mhm.
Definitely make sure that we're maintaining the body temperature, especially if it's the middle of the winter. You brought up an excellent point of throw some towels in the dryer or some blankets in the dryer, get them warmed up. In my brain, I'm like, oh, at the house, I don't have a blanket warmer. But if you're there on scene waiting for EMS to get there, you could be doing these things. You could put things in the dryer to get them nice and warm, to provide that warmth to reduce the risk of these other things that are going to exacerbate that hypoglycemia.
Well, and a note I like to make too when we're looking at this, right? And preparing any baby for transport for any reason, right? If you have a baby that's suffering with respiratory distress, we don't want to put a baby to the breast when they are tachypnic, so when they're breathing fast and they're respiratorily unstable, because risk of aspiration. And it can be a real kick in the butt too, because sometimes we know if they can clear some of what's in their bellies, right, through a good nurse, it can bring down the breathing. It can do that. But a lot of people will say, well, that baby is going to need to eat because of XYZ. Don't bring a baby to the breast if the baby is struggling with breathing. You can increase risk of aspiration. But if respiratory distress is not an issue, right, immediately skin to skin and offering the breast early if you are fearful of hypoglycemia, bigger baby than expected, long second stage, any resuscitative efforts or any maneuvers that you needed with delivery, sticky shoulder, shoulder dystocia, some of those you're going to want to encourage nursing earlier, and you're going to want to keep skin to skin as long as you can, right? And really allow for that baby to not have to make their own body heat and to have like an immediate source of glucose. And not a lot of midwives, I know, actually I can't say a lot or not because practice is so different across the United States. Some will carry like a dextrose gel so that if you are far away and you have a baby with hypoglycemia, and let's say it's a primip or the nursing's just not doing it, they need more immediate treatment, we do have oral dosing guidelines for, you know, making sure we can dose baby with some sugar while we're getting ready for transport. Because again, add a little sugar, keep the heat stable, right? Get the breathing between 30 breaths and 60 breaths a minute, right? If we can help hold that, then acidosis can kind of stay away, right?
Mhm.
But it's the slips in those, which come from these complications that can compound each other, that we have to make calls about transport early, right? So we can get what the baby needs as quick as possible. But we can make up for it, like with what you're saying. Yeah, warm up those blankets, especially if you know, like everything you're doing, baby still needs help. Now we're preparing to go and making sure that on that trip, they are not compromised. And sometimes if they're stable, nurse them. Just keep nursing, nurse as much as you can, right? On top of while those blankets are getting warmed up, everything else is getting set to go.
Yeah. So another thought that I had as we were talking the other day was so many EMS providers, you know, I feel like on both sides of the spectrum, you can have people where like ego gets in the way. Who's the real expert here? And especially as an EMS provider and knowing how little education we really do have on these things, I feel like it helps to almost have somebody acknowledge like it's okay that you're uncomfortable with this. You don't have to walk in here and pretend that you know everything. Because that's the scariest part about being the one that walks in on the scene is like, and you see so many people, the way that they kind of handle that is by like inflating their ego and pretending that they know everything. So I feel like kind of finding that delicate balance between like, you guys are the experts in babies. What you need right now is transport. And every state and every county and every service, like the states may have different laws, the services may have different, you know, policies and procedures and everything else. But I personally had, you know, had been transported for a like birth related issue and they sent the nurse with the EMS crew. I don't even know the credentials of the EMS crew. They sent a nurse to like from the hospital to manage me on the way. So it was like acknowledging that these people aren't like the highest level trained for this. So they sent the nurse with me. And so I don't know when you guys are doing a delivery, are you by yourself having to then be responsible for managing baby and mother? Or do you have like a team? Do you have somebody that could stay and maintain mother? In the
Great
situation I
question.
referred to where the baby was delivered, we transported baby and mom together. But like if baby needs a lot of work and the crew focusing just on baby, is there usually another person that could stay and focus on mom
Mhm.
while they could stay and focus on mom while baby's being transported, managed, and maybe having somebody come with to help. And again, that all depends on state, county, you know, service rules. But
Mhm.
that's always another option is we can come with you. We can help make you more comfortable by coming with you and providing what we do know, you know?
And that's really, you know, and again, so state by state, it's dependent, right? In certain states, because I'm not like when I was licensed in Alaska, I was not allowed to hand off a client in need of higher level care, OB, NICU, any of that. I could not hand off care to EMTs, meaning I had to go because the only person who could receive my clients, because my statutes that regulated my license said, you're in charge until somebody with a higher level scope can assume care. And EMTs in general, right, were okay with that. Now, there are horror stories, but in my transport experiences, they were happy to have somebody say, hey, right, she's got 18 gauge already landed. I need you to draw Pitocin in case, like, if I have a manual, if I have a placenta that's not coming, right? This may release. Can you get some Pitocin set, right? So, in some states, EMS will work with you. Some states, they are not going to be legally allowed to have you on the bus, period.
Yeah.
In a lot of birth situations, because midwifery is an apprenticeship lineage at its heart, right? Community-based midwifery. At a birth, you're typically going to have a midwife and a second. And that second is either another licensed midwife, it's an advanced student, or it's a birth assistant, maybe a community nurse. A lot of people will employ other birth workers who also have good birth assisting skill. So typically there's going to be two attendants, and that second attendant will be good enough to back the midwife help with meds, help with landing bags, things like that. And then possibly a third, like newer student. So that's typically what you're going to have on our side, right? Showing up. That
Okay.
doesn't include doula or anything else on that side. Transporting moms and babies. It's always an interesting thing, right? Some hospitals, some EMS, you put them in the bus, they have to get, they have to go through intake, right? Some of these algorithms, like if the mom comes with, they're both getting checked in. So sometimes you're going to do private car transport if it's not emergent, right? And emergent transports, if it's a baby emergent transport, typically the mom or the dad's going to go, the midwife's going to follow right behind with the mom or get them stable, ready, and then go and meet. Because again, we don't want to have a lot of distance between mom and baby for both of their physiologic stability in those first hours postpartum, right? It's good for moms. They don't bleed as much if they're nursing in skin to skin. All right.
Yeah.
And so, every state's different though, but in general, right, do try to go on the bus if you can. If not, bring the other member of the family quickly behind is how a lot of midwives will do it.
Yeah. So awesome.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure. Did you have
It's
more
okay.
questions? Where do you want to
So,
go?
no, recapping with the triangle of acidosis, hypoxia, hypoglycemia, hypothermia, keep a baby warm. The best way is skin to skin. It's not blankets. Babies are not quite endothermic when they're first born. So they need exothermic heat. We put them on parents. Parents naturally, physiologically are going to pump heat towards the baby. Okay. Right. Hypoxia. Let's make sure they can breathe. Blow by to reduce respiratory distress is one of your most effective tools if you carry oxygen. 6-liter blow by near the face on a mask that can do blow by or just held stable off there. Anything to reduce baby having to work hard to get oxygen, we want that, right? And then nursing as long as they're respiratorily stable. Instigate nursing early in our babies that are macrosomic, right? So if we're at 4 kg, right, or about 8 pounds, 13 ounces or more, if we're small for gestational age, 5 pounds or so, right? If you're hitting that area, we want those babies nursing immediately. And we're watching for symptoms of things like hypoglycemia, peripheral jitteriness, right? We're keeping a really close eye. Even if we have a baby that didn't have risk symptoms, but maybe this baby, we had an uncomplicated pregnancy, but we just had a sticky second stage. Our pushing phase just was a little tight, right? And we saw some terminal MEC. We know this baby got a big squeeze. We saw the MEC. We know the MEC lets us know this baby had a hard time getting its oxygen back up while it was going through the stress of labor and the pushing phase. These are all signs to us to immediately instigate these triangle of comfort to avoid the triangle of acidosis that you're bringing up. So in transport, I loved what you said, right? We're going to get warm blankets. We're going to skin to skin. You and I chatted, and in some states, you are not allowed to keep baby in your arms during transport.
Yeah, so that was another thing I was just thinking about is it's also like in Massachusetts, we didn't have anything special to put on the stretcher for a baby. We sometimes would transport them in a baby car seat that we would strap to the stretcher. Where I work now, it's like, nope, that is absolutely not allowed. Baby has to be, on this specific thing that we have to secure baby safely. It is not warm. It's really hard to even line this plastic thing with a blanket, you know what I mean? And so in that situation, it's like, well, what do you do? So that's where those warm blankets and stuff like that would come in handy, because if we have no choice based on law, policy, procedure that we can't take mom, we can't do skin to skin, we have to strap them to this thing. Well, let's make sure that they are as warm as we possibly can, even if it's not the ideal way to do it. Because I mean, I know technically, yeah, it's not safe to transport a baby skin to skin, but it's like, what's physiologically best for the baby? And that's all going to depend on where you are and what the rules and regulations are there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and when you were chatting, so you've been in EMS, you've done nursing in place. Now you do flight nursing, right? All of these, you were talking before about family involvement. And I really wanted us to get into like things when it comes to transport tips. It's not just about let's keep the baby stable. Although, yeah, let's keep the baby stable, right? Keep that triangle, not touching the baby, keep the baby comforted, right? In a zone of regulation, right? But family involvement when it comes to transport, when a family has to go through the energy of, well, we had, let's say, our home birth
Yeah.
and
Like, how traumatic
everything.
is that? What should
Yeah.
be an uneventful birth? You're
Yeah, we
stable
want
enough
to
to
go to
deliver
bed
at home,
here.
so.
Yeah. I had my baby at home because I want to have my baby at home and I want to go to bed at home when I'm
And I know
done.
the importance of being close to this baby immediately, and that's why I'm doing
Yeah.
this midwife, this at-home process. And now this is not at all what I planned. Now I'm being torn away from my baby. My baby's, if you can't ride with the baby, the baby's being ripped away. If you have to be transported separately for any reason, that's traumatic. Like, that's traumatic enough, even if you were going to have a hospital birth. But I almost feel like, especially for those women who are seeking that home birth, they're really, really connected to the importance of that connection between the baby and the mother right
Mhm.
after delivery. It's like, no, I'm going to do this at home so that they're not going to whisk my baby off to a nursery away from me. And now I'm in this situation where my baby is being ripped away from me. Like,
Yeah.
that's traumatic for mom and baby.
Exactly. Yeah. So what tips do you have in those situations? Like, how can we have families find a sense of power and involvement so they don't feel too out of control in something that's happening very quickly often?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely, if you have enough people, have somebody that is kind of assigned to the mother to talk to the mother, work with the mother, have have the mother as close as possible to anything that's going on with the baby while they're being worked on. So I'm going to get into a little bit of a personal story here. Is that good?
I'm open to it, please. I'm grateful you want to share. It's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm actually a nurse today and even got into the medical field at all because I had a complicated pregnancy, early delivery, baby born ultimately at 28 weeks after my water broke at 26. And that's where I was like whisked off to the hospital. The nurse came along with me as they sent me down to Boston. And I laid in bed for a few weeks pregnant, had my daughter. She was doing great in the NICU, and then she got really sick one day. And it's like when babies suddenly get sick, it's like it happens like that. And the entire time, there was a nurse assigned to me. I don't know how much like beyond the birth and delivery, but she ended up with necrotizing enterocolitis. Her bowel ruptured. They were like watching closely for that. They were like, if this happens, that's really bad. We have to transfer her across to Boston Children's, so she can go into surgery. And when she started declining, it happened really fast. They called the transport team. So this is a little bit different than like a home birth situation, but it's still like, my baby's doing great. She's stable. Everything's good. I'm just going to visit her today, to see her. And there was a nurse assigned to me that even when the transport team came and the doctor's in the room, respiratory's in the room, they're intubating her, they're starting new IV lines. There's like 10 people crowded around the bed with this, not even 3-pound baby. And this one nurse was like, get up here, get in here, like grab my arm, drag me. And she's like, get your hand in between these people, get your hand on her, like hold your hand on her chest, hold her fingers here, like telling me where I could get in there to touch her, where I wouldn't be in the way. And working in the ER, I see so many times they're like, well, parents don't want to see this. Parents shouldn't be seeing this. So they kind of like close the parents out of the room, put them in a locked room, not a locked room, put them in like a consultation room and have them wait. And then you come out, and this is for all families, not just parents, but like then they come out and say, oh, we did everything we could. And it's really hard to accept that like you did everything you could when you don't actually get to witness it. Like the only time, so I didn't transfer across the street with her on the ambulance because it was like NICU to OR. They went straight into the operating room with her. Um, but I wasn't even thinking about like I need to do that because they were so on top of making sure that I was in there, that I was part of it, that I was witnessing everything that was happening, that I was holding her and providing that like physical support. Um, the only time that I was away from her was while she was actually in the OR. They called me as soon as she came out. I was in the NICU with her. They were having like a really hard time stabilizing her, and she ultimately ended up passing away. Like they weren't able to stabilize her at all. And at the time, I was not medical whatsoever, but I knew just enough about vitals to be like, that's not good. Like her oxygen's low, her heart rate's really high, her blood pressure's really low. And they were like, we can't oxygenate her. So I was like, well, can I hold her? And they were like, well, if you hold her, we have to switch her from this ventilator to that ventilator. She's going to pass away faster. And I was like, but she's passing away anyway. Like, I'd rather her go sooner and in my arms than on this ventilator that's going to keep her alive longer laying on this bed. And they were like, you're absolutely right. So they switched her over, put her in my arms, skin to skin, chest to chest, and everything stabilized, like all of her vitals for like 5 hours. I just sat there and like everything, I was like, they were like, wow, holy crap, this is crazy. Now, as soon as I like moved her off of me to try to let her father hold her, everything just like crashed and she did pass away. But that just really, really spoke to me about the importance of that skin to skin and how much that can really help a baby regulate. Especially when like this is literally a baby that they're like, she's gonna die any minute now, to 5 hours of completely stable vitals to crashing the second you pull her off. Like there's something to that, you know? Um, I kind of like went off on a little bit of a tangent
No.
there.
No, it's
But
important.
I didn't like half the details I wasn't initially planning on diving into, but we were talking about the skin to skin. So I feel like that really ties that in.
Yeah.
But for me, as the parent, seeing everything that they were doing really helped me to accept what was happening, what was going on, to really trust that they were doing everything that they could and that they really cared. Like the fact that they grabbed me and pulled me into every single thing. They had somebody designated to explaining to me everything that was going on every step of the way. It's so easy to get caught up in like hyper focus on the baby and not paying attention to like the trauma that the mother's going through. And that experience there is where I was like, I want to be that for somebody someday. I want to be a nurse. And so she passed away. And then, like, that was in November. And in January, I started school.
Wow.
So it was
I
like,
didn't know
okay,
it was
this
so
happened.
quick.
And this is pushing me towards that purpose. The experience that I had with like the nursing staff and the care and how much they focused on me and making sure that I understood everything that was going on as well. The amount that they believed in and encouraged, like even early on when she was doing well, as soon as possible, they were like, as many feeds as we can possibly do with her, skin to skin on your chest, even though I couldn't breastfeed, but they were using, my breast milk and everything else. It was like skin to skin. Like they really, really believe and know the importance of that. And I believed it too until I actually experienced like right as she was literally dying and everything stabilized skin to skin. Um, but yeah, for me, it's like just the importance of really including the mother, really including the parent, having them be part of it, having them be part of the decision-making process. Like obviously, there's only so much they can really decide. Like if you're like, no, this is the hospital that they really need to go to, like we can't just stay here, but provide the opportunity for them to make as many decisions as they can within like what is best for the baby. You know what I mean? Best for the mother, best for the baby. Providing the opportunity to make as many decisions as possible.
Well,
And just
thank you
really
so
having that
much.
support person that is like there for the mother. And I've also witnessed a lot of people try to like support family members by like, oh, they're there. It's okay. And it's let them feel the full range of every bit of emotion that's coming out. Like nothing that they are feeling, unless they're acting as like a danger to somebody, if I'm working in the ER and there's a family member that's like making threats or acting dangerous, that's the only time to like remove them from it. But have somebody there with them, supporting them and allowing them to actually like feel any emotions that are coming up, you know?
Well, thank you so much. Your story is so, I don't ever want, yeah, it's just so, it's a beautiful story as even, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Right. And yet we have you helping so many people now. Right. I'm grateful that you shared the story. I'm grateful it turned into this book, this review guide. I'm grateful that you are sharing so much of your education and passion because it is so helpful and it's going to help change critical care of neonates, right? That they are not just little humans or not little adults. We know that, right?
Yeah.
They have certain symptoms. It's not too scary And also we need to know when to go, right?
Yes.
Because you know, when babies turn, like you said, when babies need help, by the time when you see it, you got to go fast, right? So we want to get them help before we're seeing huge signs that, oh no, right? Because babies can go from being very good to not in 3 days, 72 hours, as quick as
Yeah.
bacteria can grow,
Yeah.
honestly, right? And that's why we don't mess around with high respirations in the community setting, right? Why we don't mess around with jitteriness, right? So I've got a comment here, Natalia. Hi, Natalia. Thank you. Can you provide links to information about dextrose gel dosage for neonates who are at risk for or are showing signs of hypoglycemia? What I can provide is we have I think it's $26, an ebook that has all of that written into it with algorithms, identification, treatment, and management strategies on the website. So, which we did a lot of research for. I don't have that reference list, but it is in the book. But on the website, it's an ebook available for immediate download, neonatal hypoglycemia, identification, treatment, and management in the community birth settings. But you can also do some searching around there. There are really distinct dosing per weight and how to, when you see a glucometer, what you need to do. So you can find those algorithms as well. But if you want our book, you can download it and it's got all of them in there. So just to address that comment from Natalia, if anybody has questions for Jessica, for me, the other Jessica, anything about transport stuff, please drop them in, right? That helps us because this is a real good time right now to address some of those questions, right? Especially from somebody who's been in the flight nurse and transport side and the EMS side, right? So anything you've seen that you want more details on, ask her. She might actually have an answer. So please drop that in the chat.
Or even the patient side.
I'm sorry, go ahead. What'd you say?
And even the patient side.
Yeah, or the patient side, right? If you've been a patient, provider, patient, axillary support, any of it. Drop your questions. Okay. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, so our website, hi, I'm Jessica Johnson. I am the Director of Development for the Pacific Birth Institute. So it is pacificbirthinstitute.com. I'll drop it in the chat. But yeah, this is our education series, Birth Working. And we are just finishing up our 4th season, which is so much fun. Here we go. And Jessica, actually, let's do a little promo for you. What do you got coming up where people can find you? You've written the review book.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want to drop anything else for them to check out or where else to find you?
I am speaking at, I got to look up the exact name of it. I'm speaking at a conference in Alaska. Actually, it's interesting that you kind of came from Alaska and worked in Alaska. It's just a total coincidence. But in September 1st through the 6th, I'm going to be speaking at Alaska's Critical Care Conference, held by Air Care Alaska. So they reached out to me because one of the women putting it together, she had seen my book. She had seen it talked about through like a critical care educators website, and she reached out and she actually was like, hey, I see that we have a mutual contact, and she had your number. So I got a random phone call from Alaska. So I'll be flying out there in September to speak there. That's really the only thing that I have coming up for that. I'm actually in school to be a mental health psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Yeah, awesome.
So yeah, that's kind of where my focus is right now. I've just been like really busy and random things might pop up related to the book, but I haven't been like pushing that or putting myself out there or trying to like do that much there. So I'm really grateful that you kind of reached out and had me come on here. So I've just been focusing on school lately.
That's wonderful. I'm so excited. You're going to be a breath of fresh air to the mental health space. And God, do we need more nurse practitioners in the mental health space everywhere right now. So I'm so glad you're doing that. You couldn't have picked a better field, right? Everybody needs that support.
Yeah.
Okay. Shameless plugs and commercial time. We have 3 rooms left in Kona, January 15th to the 19th, 2026. Jen and I rented a house on a 1.2 acre private farm, 10 minutes outside of Kailua, Kona town, in Hawaii. So it's going to be 3 workshops, 15 MEEK CEUs. It's a midwife retreat. We're going to the Emerald Sands beach there. We're going to be having so much fun. So on the website, pacificbirthinstitute.com, we've got our Kona retreat coming up in January. I'll be speaking at the Carolina Birth Junkies 10th anniversary retreat in August. And we have a midwifery skills, student skills day in Strasburg, Virginia, end of September at Linden Tree Midwifery. So that's going to be super fun. We have some new charting and SOAP documentation templates curated just to midwifery practice, now available on the website. We're going to have more bundles out this next month. And we're going to be announcing our next round of scholarships for our professional birth assistant training program. So do keep an eye on your email if you've applied for a scholarship. If you haven't before, do so. We're going to do another draw. We do our quarterly polls here soon. So we're going to award those out. Okay, end commercial. That's the end of my commercial break right there.
Love it.
Right?
You just
Oh,
flow nicely through it. I'm like
yeah,
stumbling on all my words and you're just like boom, 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 boom.
Yep, we got things coming up. We're hitting that. What is it? It's almost May. Almost, tomorrow's May Day, right? Tomorrow is 5/1. So we've just got a couple of things coming up down the pike. But when it comes to the weekly scene for Birth Working, we're gonna have some repeats that are gonna come out. We're gonna do some replays on years ago, Jen and my early seasons. So we're gonna have releasing shoulder dystocia maneuvers. And a couple other key topics, reducing maternal mortality on replay so that they come into our Substack instead of just down in our Facebook feed. So we'll have some of that still going on, but we also have kids and summer coming up. So we like to do our live stuff like school kids, right? We'll do it again probably in the fall. So anybody else have any other questions? Drop them in the chat. Jess, anything else you'd like to leave us with? Any random things you're still thinking of when it comes to transport tips?
I'm trying to think. I respond like well when somebody has like more of or like in the flow of a conversation. So I'm just trying to think if there's any like random tidbits that are coming to mind. I'm sure there's 100.
One I have?
But
One I have? I think younger midwives and early midwives have a fear of the choice of calling 911. Either they want to do it really quick and be done, or they wait too long to call. And what I want to offer a lot of people who are newer to the space or are still struggling with that and haven't done a lot of transport, just haven't had the time in the field, call the moment you know you need to call. Okay. And let's say you have a shoulder dystocia and you've been doing maneuvers and it's been 60 seconds. It's been 90 seconds. Are you calling? Right? That baby could come out in the next 30 seconds while you're on the phone with EMS. It's not a problem. You can once they get there, you can turn them away if everything's good. But calling when you know there's a problem before it goes from a pink flag to a big bright red flag is one of the best things I can recommend. And just know, baby comes out, everything turns around. It is okay. They'll stay sometimes just to make sure everybody's stable, and then they'll go. Okay. Just calling EMS doesn't mean you have to transport. But if you don't call EMS because of fear of transport, you're going to delay service. You're going to delay getting the needs met. And that increases what Jessica brought up, lactic acid, right? We're going to try to keep babies out of anaerobic metabolism if they're struggling with anything, right? And so getting the help they need quickly. Same in hemorrhage management, okay? You tried your stuff, you got your Pitocin in, now you're throwing your IV lines in, now you're rectally delivering Cytotac. Are you on the phone? Right? And even if you're on the phone and they're on their way and you do see reducing of bleeding, right? They're still going to come and you can say, actually, we're good to go. You're going to establish tone. And if that's true, they'll leave you. So never be scared to call and do not delay a call. Because even if things get better, you can just say, hey, go ahead and go on back. Right? And they don't have to take you in.
correct.
That's one of
They're
my
not going
big
to charge you for showing up and not being transported either. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just don't hesitate, right? They'd rather be there and not be needed than get there 5, 8, 12, 20, 10 minutes too late.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. If anybody has questions for Jessica Henry after this, go ahead and email us, pacificbirthinstitute@gmail.com, and I'll make sure and get a hold of her and get your answers. This has been lovely. I'm so excited. Alaska is lucky to have you for this transport talk and what you're going to bring for their critical care and their flight teams. So I won't be up there when you get there, but maybe I'll put you in contact with my other friends, right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, everybody. We will see you on the newsletter next week, and I'll see you next season of Birth Working. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia. Natalia says, thank you for sharing your story, Jess.
You're welcome.
Mhm. Thank you, girl. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.